Here we're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines on a graph and how do we come up with equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. So I've got two parallel lines here, and one of them is green, one's yellow. So let's look at the equation of this green one first. The equation of this one, well, it looks like it's up 4, and the slope is up 1 over 2. So my equation is going to be, well, if my slope is 1/2 and the y-intercept is 4, that means my equation is going to be y equals 1/2 x plus 4. And then this yellow line, it looks like it crosses down at -3, and its slope is up 1 over 2 also. So the yellow line, the slope is 1/2, and the y-intercept is 3. So this equation is going to be y equals 1/2 x plus 3. So what do we notice about these two lines? You should kind of be saying to your computer right now, the slopes are the same. The slopes are 1/2, and it's kind of an obvious thing where if they're parallel, their slopes have to be the same, because parallel means they'll never cross, and they're always going to run in the same direction. And so if they're running in the same direction, that means their slopes have to be identical, because otherwise they would cross if they weren't identical. So parallel slopes, or parallel lines, have slopes that are identical, or the same, you could say. Oh my goodness, what's going on here? Let's try this. There we go. Identical, or you could say the same. Either way. So let's look at perpendicular lines then. Perpendicular lines do cross, and in fact perpendicular lines cross at a 90-degree angle. And so what's special about perpendicular lines? Well, let's do the same thing. This green line crosses up 2, that's the y-intercept, and then it looks like its slope is going to be up 3 over 4. Up 3 over 4. So the slope on the green line is 3 over 4, and the y-intercept on this one happens to be 2. So the equation for this is going to be 3 over 4x plus 2. That's going to be the equation on the green line. Okay, let's look at the yellow line. I'm going to erase some of this green line stuff so that it's not in our way when we're doing the figuring out the yellow line. So let's see. Yellow line, we've got, it crosses up here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the y-intercept is at 7. And then the slope, it looks like it goes down 4 over 3. Down 4 to the right 3. So the slope is down 4 over 3. So the equation of this one is -4 over 3x plus 7. So what about these two lines is special? Well, this one might not be quite as obvious, but once you see it, it makes a little bit more sense. Let's look at the slopes of these. One of the slopes is 3 over 4. The other one is -4 over 3. So those are kind of related, right? If we have 3 over 4 and the other one is -4 over 3, all we did was we flipped it and then made it opposite. So flipping it is called the reciprocal, and then opposite, means that if it's negative, it becomes positive. If it's positive, it becomes negative. So perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite, and that means, negative to positive. Opposite reciprocals. And reciprocals means you flip it. So perpendicular lines always have opposite reciprocal slopes, and parallel lines always have the slopes that are the same. And so a question that you'll most likely see is, oops, I think I skipped ahead too far. There we go. Is write an equation of a line parallel to y equals 2 over 3x plus 4 and goes through this point. And so what you need to realize is that if it's parallel, all we really care about is the slope. The slope is 2 over 3. So that tells me that my new line, the slope is going to be 2 over 3. Because it's parallel to this line, the y-intercept doesn't really matter. So I don't really care about that plus 4. It doesn't do anything for me. What it does give me, though, is the slope. The 2 over 3 tells me the slope of this new line. And then the point is negative 1, 6. So that means if I just kind of sketch a graph here, we go back 1, up 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a point, and then it goes up 2 over 3, and there's going to be your line. That's what they're saying is happening right here. And what they want is they want an equation for that line. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to be smart about this. Since we learned about point-slope form of a line, I'm just going to plug it in there. So we've got y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So y1 is negative 1. So that means it's going to be y plus 1. So when you subtract a negative, that becomes positive. And then the slope is 2/3. And then we do x minus 6. So if it tells you to write an equation in this form, or it just says write an equation parallel to that, you're done here. That's the equation. You're good to go. Now, if it does say write it in y equals mx plus b form, we could figure that out. So what we would do is we would distribute this 2/3 in here, and we would end up with y plus 1 equals 2/3 x minus, well, 2/3 of 6 is 4, so it'd be minus 4. And then I would subtract 1 from both sides, and I would get y equals 2/3 x minus 5. So this is in slope-intercept form, but if it just says write an equation, what we wrote to begin with is totally okay. You do not need to convert it unless you're told to. All right, so let's do the same thing, but let's go back to that perpendicular question. So this is kind of the same idea. It says write an equation of a line perpendicular to y equals 4 over 7x plus 4, and goes through the point 6, negative 9. So once again, if it tells us that it's perpendicular, that means that all I care about is the slope of that line. And so if the slope of this original line is 4 over 7, that means to find the slope of my new line, I'm going to flip it, 7 over 4, and I'm going to make it the opposite. So this is the opposite reciprocal slope is what that's called. And then it goes through that point, 6, negative 9. So I'm going to write my equation, y minus y1 equals the slope x minus x1. And then I'm just going to plug stuff in like I did before. So y minus negative 9 would be y plus 9. And then our slope is negative 7 over 4. And then we do x minus 6. And that would be your answer. You could distribute and get it to y equals mx plus b. It's going to be a little messy. You'll get a fraction or a decimal in this case. But this is fine. This is a perfectly acceptable answer. If it says write an equation, you can just leave it in point slope form. So that's it. In terms of perpendicular and parallel lines, you really need to know that perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes and parallel lines have the same slope. And then you're just applying everything else you've learned about lines.